Hello, my friends. I'm so glad to be here with you. Thanks for coming. Whether you're here live or on the replay, we appreciate you. As always, I'm Rachel Archelaus, founder of the Intuitive Art Academy, and we have our lovely business BFF extraordinaire, Carrie Roldan.
Hey, Rachel. Hey, everybody. I already see Guillaume is here and commenting. We love you, Guillaume.
Thanks, Guillaume. Glad you're here. You know, this is going to be a fun one for Carrie because this is kind of a dare, I think. Why are we talking about this? What is up with the idea of having psychic shame? It's not something I've ever talked about. Carrie, I think, is one who framed it like that. So I just want to tell you where this came from. So the other day, I was watching a YouTube channel that I watch all the time. I'm actually in a paid class that they're offering right now. The channel, to be fair, has a little bit of a negative slant. They talk a lot about like problematic people and in the money industry. It's a money channel and just like, bad consumerist behavior. So I understood that, but they had a whole episode on like the age of the scammer. And within that, they included psychics. They included specifically Tyler Henry, who's like the Hollywood medium person. And I never felt anything weird from him. I've only seen clips, though. So I can't vouch for him personally. But I never got the vibe that there was anything weird going on. But even so, even if one person is a fraud, it doesn't make the entire population of people who are psychic frauds. And I just got really worked up about it because I know that that is how some people feel. There are also people who feel that gay is a choice. There are people who feel that Black people are bad. Like, there's pretty terrible people who believe some pretty terrible things. But I felt like this was a safe space. It just kind of took me off guard because here I am, I'm paying this person, and they basically just wiped out my existence, right? Like, they don't believe that being psychic is real or valid, or that you can offer psychic services without being a fraudster. And I just felt really triggered by that, to be honest. Like, I just felt like, whoa. I didn't expect that here. I had my guard down. I was, just enjoying the content. And then it triggered a lot more within me too, of basically like a lifetime of hearing that in the public from, friends, maybe even family members when it first started. And I just felt like, I'm sure that since this is triggering me, there is more to reveal or just let go of, right? Like, there's a part of that within me that is wounded. There's a part of that active wounding happening within me, or it wouldn't bother me at all. And I just know this is so true for a lot of people. In my work, I hear from a lot of people that they were very intuitive, psychic as a child. And then it was like bullied out of them, or their parents said, you can't do that, or they just never had that nurtured. And so they basically turned it off for most of their life. And then when it comes back to them, or when they feel like Carrie, like when they just feel like they can accept that part of them and let it grow, it can be really, really life-changing. So that's why we're here. And Carrie wants me to get all fiery about it because she sees how much good can come from that. And so that's why we're talking about it today.
Well, it's so funny that you said that because, like, I completely forgot that we had this conversation a day or two ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, if this pisses you off, get fired up. But that's so not where I am today. So it'll be interesting to see where this conversation goes. But I want to tell you my experience with this. And then I think I have so many questions for you. So, my experience is that I was one of those people who was told as a child. I feel like the 80s were a lot about this. Like, there was a ton of like UFO stuff, and then people saying, except for that's not real. Like, people who believe in UFOs are crazy. And people had these very real, you know, sightings or whatever. And then there was always like, oh, those people are wackadoos. And the there's a logical explanation for everything. So I definitely grew up hearing that in many places. So hearing that about psychics as well. I did not really understand. I didn't know that I still am not like super clear actually on like the difference between like someone who's psychic and someone who's a fortune teller. And um but I was also sort of raised to believe that like fortune tellers, like if you're going to go to the palm reader or that those people are scammers. That they know how to read people. They know how to read just like salespeople do, right? And that they prey on vulnerability. And I also grew up hearing that about chiropractors as well. My mom was a medical professional, and she was like, "Yeah, they're not real doctors. They're quacks. They think that they can cure everything." So the reason I'm saying this is like I grew up with that. I also grew up really wanting to believe in psychics and wanting for there to be aliens, and right. So there was this like I was like pulled to it and intrigued by it and wanted, and I think that a whole generation of us did. That's why like shows like Unsolved Mysteries was so like powerful, is because like there was this desire to believe it, but they always would show the other side. Like, what do you believe? It's a mystery, right? So anyways, that is kind of how I grew up. So I didn't grow up thinking, I grew up believing that like psychics probably aren't real. Um Ghosts probably aren't real. Like, there's a logical explanation for everything. That's sort of like the household I grew up in. So I had that going on and a strong curiosity. And so I just want to say that was very different than your upbringing, Rachel, where like you literally came into this world knowing I am psychic. Like I see dead people. Right. Like it was a very different upbringing. So I am definitely not like triggered in the same way that when you say like psychics are scammers and that hits you, for me, I just sort of grew into, I think the way that I say we all, but the world has grown into like, oh, the government has declassified UFO stuff, and like there's like legit sightings, and maybe not every abduction story is true, right? Like that there have been people who have been revealed as they were just lying to get the exposure or whatever. I think the world has come to terms with the fact that like, oh yeah, there's probably life out there. And I remember when I was like little, that was a question that was asked, like, do you believe that there's life beyond Earth? And I was like, no possible way, right? That was sort of like the likelihood of that. And I just think that the perception now, even in the scientific world, is like the likelihood that there's not life outside of Earth is probably pretty rare, right? So the same thing has happened with me, like with chiropractic care. Like I just realized, like, oh, actually, it works and it makes sense, and it like, and I think my mom might even be on board there too. And same with psychics, right? I came to a point in my adulthood where I was suddenly surrounded by incredible people who were psychic. And I also had my own experience with a psychic where I was like embarrassed to say that I was going to a psychic, and I was super embarrassed to say what she had told me. But like I couldn't stop talking about it or believing it, and she was like 100% spot on in so many ways. And I remember asking her like, how are you doing this? Like like that. So anyways, I'm saying this because I do feel like this is an old wound, and the world is moving and changing, and it is definitely something, and I know you have evidence of this. There's evidence of this with you, Rachel, are sort of always on the forefront of things. I feel like you're at least, well, the world's moving faster. I think when you were born, you were at least 20 years ahead of your time. And now like the world is catching up with you. I'll stop talking, but I just want to say that I feel like this is going to be a productive conversation.
Yes, me too. And I also love knowing that when I'm feeling triggered by something, it's on the way out. So it's And I'll tell you. So first of all, Corinne, let's get to your comment because this is important too. Same thing. Oh wow, John Oliver did an episode on the topic of psychics are frauds a few years back. I really haven't been able to watch his show again. Same. I did not watch that episode because why would I? But
I did watch I
what?
did watch it, and I was super disappointed in him. Like, I love him. I do still watch him. But I was like, "Ah." But because I don't have that wound, right? I was like, oh, he just doesn't know.
Yeah. And again, I'm okay with everyone having their own reality. It just does feel personal because it's like I didn't have a choice, you know? Like it feels strange. It does feel strange and it's on me that I'm letting it get in and feel that way, of course. Um but to see people who are otherwise very intelligent and with it and would never like disparage a black person or a gay person or anyone else on national television, like with their platform, it feels really personal to be like, oh, well, all of these people are just out for your money and like they're not real. It's like if and the thing is, there are a lot of studies that have already proven ESP and a whole bunch of other extrasensory things. So it's not hard to find science to back us up. You know, like it's not, I don't know, I don't understand, I guess, why it's such a big draw. I mean, Carrie and I think my friend Matthew brought up the fact that most people who have really strong beliefs against something, it's also personal for them. So something happened in their life to someone they love or to themselves and they felt taken advantage of, or they just have this like I know with the YouTube I was watching that channel, that host feels like the world is being victimized in every way. Like every level, everybody's being victimized by all these things. And so it doesn't really shock me that she had the view. I guess John Oliver too. His shows are negative. They're exposing things. And, you know, when you live in that world of looking for things to expose, you're going to find stuff and it might not always be true. So, you know, I mean, I think it's really unfortunate. Hmm?
Well, I want to stop you because there are people who are claiming to be psychic who are scammers.
Of
And I
course.
think that I think is the issue is, and I don't remember the all of John Oliver's episode. And I know the psychic medium that they're talking about. Like, I don't know how you could watch his show and not 100% believe that this guy is for real. Like, I am like, wow. And I don't know how you watch a show and not believe that he's real, but you know, some people could say, "Oh, that's good television." Oh, the producers. Oh, it's right. Like people could say whatever. It was all staged. They get the backstory. Like people can make things up, but I'm imagining that this person's problem with this guy isn't. It's that he charges what he charges, right? And I think that's people's. Oh, I was gonna say that's a lot of times people are saying this. You know, my the psychic or the medium or the whatever like milked my sweet old mother out of like millions of dollars, right? And so anyways, sometimes what people are criticizing, it comes from their, well, always what people are criticizing, right? It comes from their crap. And so like with the John Oliver thing, I am vaguely remembering that his criticism was that you know, people keep coming back for like that they're it's he's criticizing an actual scam, not that all psychics are scammers, but that people are kind of, well, pay me more and I'll tell you more, pay me more and I'll tell you more, right? I guess I would consider that a scam, instead of being a person of integrity. And I think that, you know, when you and I were having this conversation, um, I think there's a difference between someone who is a psychic and someone who is working as a psychic, you know, selling psychic services who may or may not be psychic. And yeah, I don't know. I find this whole conversation fascinating because like psychic is like you're saying, it's part of who you are. You I think we're all the interesting thing, right? Is like I now fully recognize, oh, I'm super psychic. Oh, this like I can trust my intuition. Oh, turns out we're all a little bit psychic, right? So are the people who are criticizing all psychics as a scam, are they just 100% shut off from that side of themselves?
Well, so let me just clarify a few things just so we're all on the same page. And even with what you just said, like, there's nothing wrong with working as a psychic. There's nothing wrong with charging for psychic services. I mean, there's a problem with any kind of fraud. There's fraud on in every profession. There is fraud. I've had mechanics who've kept my car for a week without doing anything, and like saying that they're working on it and then giving it back to me at the end of the week and charging me money. Be like, hey, we didn't get to it. It's like, I don't know. So just to say, there's fraud everywhere, and we don't have to look that hard to find it. But so I grew up having full abilities, right? See, taste, smell, talk to dead people, talk to beings, see all kinds of things. And it just intensified as I got older. And so as I got older, I had more words to communicate to my parents what was happening and everything. And psychic was the only word we had. It was all encompassing for all of those things. There was, clairvoyant was another one, but that was even less used. Now I like to use the term extrasensory because psychic often denotes to people, not the word itself in the definition, but most people think that is you reading the future. And yeah, we can do that. That's possible because we're all connected. We're all one energy. We can know beyond time and space what is most likely to happen in any given moment. But we can also see beyond the normal scene. So extrasensory is a word that I really like, but it's not that mainstream yet, and so not a lot of people are using it. So psychic just tends to be a catch-all. And I believe that everyone is born with the capability of being psychic because, again, we're all the same energy. We're all light beings, projecting ourselves into this experience. There's no actual physical reality anyway. And I know some previous really well-known psychics, like John Edwards, does not believe that. He believes it is a like God-given gift to certain people. And the reason why I believe that we can all develop our psychic senses is because that's what I've mostly done over the last 20 years is teach psychic development. And I can very easily give people hey, focus on this or watch this way. And all of a sudden they're seeing their aura, they're connecting with their Akashic records, they're seeing their guides, they're feeling things. So I'm a believer in that sense that everyone is on equal playing field as terms of like equipment, right? We all have the same equipment, we all have the same capability, but there are certain people who have innate talent and have innate skill. And so just like with any other profession, like if you're going to see a musician who has, like Yo-Yo Ma, right? Virtuoso on the cello, like his ticket price to see his concert is probably going to be a lot more than someone who's a student who's just learning. So like it's a profession if you want it to be. Everyone has different skill level and they're able to hone it or not hone it. Like you can just be some casual psychic and talk to your friends and that's cool. And then there's someone who's been honing this for 20, 30, 50 years and is probably going to give you a better, more accurate reading if you're going to see them for that than someone who's just kind of playing around. So it's a huge world. It's a huge, vast array of people. There's going to be psychics that can, knock your socks off like the one Carrie saw, but there can also be psychics who are like, yeah, I don't really know. And I've had both experiences too. So, but that doesn't invalidate them as beings, it's like, that's the part that's kind of funny to me.
Well, and the thing that I don't know if I articulated well, but I'm thinking about, I can't remember what was Tyler the medium. What was his last name?
I don't know.
Well,
Tyler Henry.
Tyler Henry is I'm imagine like people tend to get pissed off when psychics charge a lot of money, right? But to me, that is that person knowing their value, valuing their time. Like, you don't have to go see them. You could go see somebody else. Right? He has gained a reputation as being exceptional. And so people are willing to pay. And like, anyways, I just wanted to finish that. I didn't want to make it seem like, oh, he shouldn't charge so much to use his psychic gifts. Like, he should charge whatever the hell he wants. But I wanted to make sure I was super clear on that. And I think you've articulated this really well, Rachel. I think you've articulated this really, really well. And so the rub is that psychics are getting a bad reputation. Because this goes to something that we talk about a lot with people who we work with, right? People who maybe they're not identifying as psychics, but identify as artists and are not, or spiritual, and feel like they shouldn't be charging. Do you think that maybe this is coming from like all that this perception of you shouldn't charge for like you can't make that a job? I'm just asking, like, do you think maybe this is where this is coming from?
Well, I think, there's a couple of things happening. In traditional Christian communities, this is seen as a gift from God when it's accepted, right? Because there are prophets in that, lineage. And when you have a gift from God, you're meant to share it. But I think there is a lot of stigma around charging from it because it doesn't look like work. It doesn't look like you're really doing anything special. It doesn't feel like work a lot of times when you're doing it, especially if you're not deciding to take it seriously and, practicing and, doing lifestyle things to make you clear in a better medium. So there's that. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't look like work. And in a lot of lineages, you're not supposed to charge for this kind of spiritual gift. But also, I think there's another thing about like the repeated persecution of this gift throughout time. Like, this is something that used to be celebrated very, very long ago. I think that's why a lot of people talk about like the divine feminine, because that's what, this is a very feminine flowing energy. And that got stomped out a long time ago in a big way. And then we have like from this country, the Salem witch trials, where we don't really know the whole story. We don't know if they were gifted in this way at all, or they're communicating, or they're just having fun as women or talking. Like, we don't know what was really going on. Although I'm sure a lot of psychics have spoken with those, beings. But I don't know really what happened. But it's scary. So it's scary to people that there's something beyond this seen world. And there's that too. So there's like a culture of hiding, which doesn't allow you to really charge money very easily. If you're ashamed, or if you're afraid, or if you're like being really sheepish about what you're doing, that completely goes against the spirit of allowing and receiving. So there's just a really strange push-pull happening there on like so many levels.
So this is right. This, like, you were confronted with this. Sorry about my barking dog. You were confronted with this a couple days of you, like, oh, I'm in this thing and I'm so mad that, like, can you believe they actually said this, right? And I was like, whatever. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, that was sort of my response. Like, oh, yeah, whatever. Some people are idiots, right? That is the energy that I came. And of course, it triggered something completely different in you, which I completely relate to because I have also had responses like that, just differently, right? I totally lost my question. I think I was going to ask, like, so now what, right? So now what? Because this is coming up. I know what I was going to say. You, Rachel, of course this is coming up because you are like very publicly stepping into the bigger energy of you. You've been steadily doing this in your business for a long time, which, by the way, huge plug to anything that Rachel does psychic development wise. Like, I've taken many of her psychic development stuff, and so good, right? So good. So good. I mean, hello, intuitive art, like all of it. But like, that's being in your community, Rachel, is why I have access to what I have access to. Like, I already trust a little bit, but like, my intuition led me to you, which led me to all the psychic development stuff that you do. Like, so anyways, if anybody's on the fence, just jump in. But of course, this is coming up now because you are becoming more and more public, and there's this, you just said it, ding, 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 fear of persecution. So I'm thinking about Tyler Henry, and I'm like, I mean, have you seen his show? It's amazing. Like, that guy, like, I mean, yeah, I want to know him. I want him to come be in the room with me. I want him, like, yes. And I feel that as you become more and more visible, you and Intimate Alien become more and more visible on a more mainstream scale, that like the majority of the people who are exposed to you are going to be feeling the way that I feel about Tyler Henry. And there will also be those other people, right? There will also be people being like, what? So of course it's coming up now. Of course it's triggering you now in a bigger way.
Yeah. And I was more just disappointed when I heard that at first, and then it kind of riled me up because it doesn't have to be this way. And so what next is, so for a very long time, I have wanted to make a community, a platform that people feel safe in and able to claim their, whatever they want to call it, extrasensory abilities, psychic abilities, intuitive abilities, beyond. Like, there's so many things to call it. And I've been a little afraid, to be honest, because of dumb reasons. Like, I had a friend in high school who said, like, all psychics are scammers. And so if I start talking about this more openly, like this, well, maybe I lost a friend. I don't know. But it was the little tiny things that really kind of kept me from directly talking about this. Now, of course, I'm all over the place. Every single person I've ever met probably knows I'm psychic. I've had a career in this for 20 years. Like, I'm not afraid to be Intimate Alien anywhere in public, etc. So like, the majority of me is not afraid of this. There was the tiny little inner voice. And I think I also wanted to wait to really talk about this and address this topic because I didn't want it to be reactionary. I didn't want it to come from defense or like attacking or even, disappointment or anger, because I know energetically that's not going to help anybody. And that is definitely not where I want to live, because how you feel is what you're creating more of. And so, like, this is really good practice for me because I feel really clear and elevated today. And I actually feel like, wow, I'm like really poised and like I can speak about this a little more eloquently than I would have thought. So I'm excited to have this practice here. You're like my media training, because I do plan on, letting Intimate Alien bust out this year. Like, that's what she wants. That's the energy I'm feeling. That's where my joy is. Like, that's where a lot of directions are flowing. Not all of them. I'm still going to do all the other things I love, but I felt like this is like my boot camp training. Like, if I can deal with this, if I can allow myself to see, oh, I was a little disappointed, I was a little caught off guard, but I'm okay, and I can do this, and I can handle this. And in fact, this can be a really positive thing, then I'm ready to go.
It seems like this, I was thinking about this earlier, like you are in this program where they say like all psychics are scammers or whatever. Like, it seems like it's an opportunity for you to practice and this, like, oh, okay, well, I'm like, I will love this person where they are. And like maybe even a like, hey, I want you to know I'm in your community and I'm super psychic and I like, and I'd love to offer you a session, or you know what I mean? Like this opportunity to be like, I'm sorry that you feel like all psychics are scammers. And then this is petty of me saying it out loud, but it's too late now. I've already started. And then like, oh, is that because when your grandma Nancy died when you were 7, she's here now and she wants you to know. Like, yeah, it just seems like an opportunity to rise above and to be to be triggered. Like you've experienced a trigger, you gave yourself the amount of time, because I know you were feeling a little differently when it happened. And now you are composed and you are poised. And it does seem like an opportunity to like reveal from a place of huge love the legitimacy of who you are. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, but again, and I love this conversation, Carrie. You're really helping me because so on this particular video, the host, who's female, was speaking with her friend, her good friend who had been on that show before. And he had made a video targeting Tyler Henry and calling him out for whatever reason. And the big thing that they were both talking about was that he was in the room with Tyler Henry and he's like, well, let me have a reading. Like, let me sign up for a reading. And Tyler said no. And so the guy went back and like, well, let's test you. Let's prove. Like, and Tyler was like, no. And that's really where I come from. I do not think anyone needs to prove themselves or legitimize themselves. Like, no one's going to ask your, like, you know, a gay person, oh, well, prove to me that you're gay. Go make out with that guy. Like, no, that doesn't sit well. So, I'm not interested in really changing anybody's minds. I have done readings with skeptics. I have, you know, changed a lot of people's minds, but it wasn't set up to do that. And I think when you go in with the intention of testing, that's not something I want to be a part of. Like, and my boyfriend, who is very interesting, he has tarot cards and he's very intuitive, but he also kind of doesn't believe this is real. He calls me his psychic girlfriend. Like, he very much sees every single freaking day that this is real and he gets it. But like, there's also that other part of him that's like hanging on for science, even though there is science, he's just not looking for it. But anyway, I don't even know where I was going with this, but like, I don't know. Yes, here we go. He was really interested in the beginning of our relationship to like Rachel, like, go prove this. You could do something really big for the community. And I'm like, they already exist. There's already tests. There's already lots of data like that this is a real thing. And like, that's not what interests me. I'm not interested in changing minds. I'm not interested in like, I don't know, performing for anybody. Even though like hundreds of people could come out right now and be like, Rachel, give me the most amazing reading I've ever had. And she's absolutely legit. Like, I could accumulate all of that if I needed to, but I don't feel the need to.
Well, that brought up something, a memory of something that I watched, and I don't remember what it was, but it was some psychic woman, and it was like a TV show. She was being filmed, and the person who was interviewing her, she was giving a reading to that person, or she was trying to give a reading to that person. Maybe she was a medium. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And like everything that was coming up wasn't correct. It wasn't right. So this is like on camera, and she's being super open. She's like telling the truth. And the host, I think, is like starting to feel bad for her. Like, you know, like, oh gosh, no, I don't remember that or whatever. And finally, the person behind the camera stopped and was like bawling and was saying, it was me, it was my grandma, or it was my, you know, like whatever it was, like the psychic was definitely picking up on the energy in the room. It was just the host was like, yeah, sorry, no, that's not me. So it was this beautiful example of the person who wasn't really open Like they were not accessing whatever that person was trying to get for them, but they got this beautiful demonstration of, oh, wow, that's super real. Anyways, I'm with you on the non-proving. Yeah, I know how that works out in my own life, right? It's like when you just come at something with true love and kindness. And I think it comes into like just checking in with yourself, right? Is it in my highest and best? Or is it in the highest and best of everyone involved? We could do a drawing on it, Rachel, right? To address this, to say something to these people. Obviously, you're addressing it. We're having this conversation right now. Right? But that is when you really check in with that. Sometimes doing that check-in has led me to difficult conversations that I would have rather avoided that actually worked out beautifully and amazing. And we have talked about those on this platform before. And other times when I really want to have the conversation, it's like, nope, that doesn't serve anybody right now.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference. Like I could say to this person, like write them an email or leave a comment, like, hey, there are some of us in your community who, feel like we are psychic or know we're psychic, or even if we wouldn't use that word, like extrasensory, maybe not lump everyone into the same category when you're talking about this next time. Like that could be totally appropriate. I just don't want to go into it with the attitude of like, let me change your mind, like that doesn't work for me at all. And in fact, like there are times when, because it is a co-creative thing, I never look into anyone else's energy without permission. And there can be blocks that people have to receiving information, even when they ask for it. So in all of my time doing psychic readings in all kinds of ways, paid, not paid, friends, all kinds of things, I've probably done thousands, like it's just, I connect with that energy naturally. There was only one time where I had nothing for someone, and it was kind of a funny story. So I was doing my psychic Saturdays at a wellness center in Connecticut where anyone could walk in and just have a reading. And this woman walked in with her mom, like basically sitting on top of her head. And I saw it, and I just like heard mom, and I saw this figure kind of like cross-legged, like sitting right on top of this lady. And she sat down, and all I could think of was like, oh, mom. And she's like, I want to hear from my mom, and nothing, like blank right after that, because she wanted it so badly. Like she was desperate. She had this desperation. And even though mom was right there, mom was trying to give her everything that she could give her, but there was nothing I could do about it because that desperation repels. And so like if I went to this lady and was like, let me change your mind, it might not even work. Just like with that host, there's a lot at play here. And that is why the asking for the reading is so important, because then it opens the door for that person to be allowing. So in a lot of the ways that I've changed skeptics' minds, I was reading for their wife. And they were sitting over in the corner just listening and being really, really surprised at what was coming out, to the point where most of them then asked me questions at the end, like, oh my God, can you do me? So it's more subtle than that. This is a very subtle energy, and it needs to go where it needs to go. Like there's nothing I can do about that. I'm just the messenger.
Well, I hope this is comfort for anybody watching and anybody like you. Because it is my firm belief that as more and more and more science evolves, right? The science behind like this shit is real. I mean, it's old. Like it's been around a long time. Mm-hmm. But it is becoming more and more and more mainstream, right? We are seeing like just the direction that all science is going is science and religion and spirituality. And like, they're all kind of like starting to like, oh, oh crap, it's all the same thing. Like,
yeah. I remember when they discovered the Higgs boson, and they call it the God particle, because they got to explain how energy became matter. It's like, there you go. I mean, this stuff is happening all the time.
So I guess what I want to say is there will be acceptance, right? There will be. So whatever is coming up now, right? There's always um trailblazers. There's always like the early adopters. There's always that, but like the legitimacy of, I mean, I'm even thinking about the LGBTQ I was going to say industry, but like that whole, like that didn't exist. There wasn't a name for that even when I was growing up. Like people were like, oh, Uncle so and so, or someone's a cross dresser. Like they didn't have, and right now, like it's a thing. And while not everybody is on board, like more and more and more people are saying, like, oh, people are different. People are born one way or the other. And I think while these things are becoming mainstream, becoming just, I don't know, maybe this isn't fair. I'm like, now that I'm saying it, I'm like, I guess like these people have been around since the beginning of time. It's taken a really long time to get here, actually. But regardless, like I feel like the world is moving more towards acceptance of this stuff, acceptance of, not everybody, my experience, I don't need to be defensive. I don't need to defend my reality. I could be open to that other people live other realities. I think that is where I'm headed. And maybe that is my optimism. We've had this conversation before because even as I'm saying it, like there is a lot of evidence right now that the world is actually like rallying hard against everything that I'm saying. But I actually think that that rallying hard, that happens before the total acceptance. So that's my feeling.
Well, that's more than me. I never think about total acceptance because, like, hey, we don't need that, right? I mean, there's going to be people who believe differently, and that's okay. That doesn't bother me. But we are expanding our acceptance for sure, like exponentially. I really, really love that. And I've always thought like we should have the LGBTQIAE plus because I feel like we could be on that, like it's a little different, right? We're not necessarily being persecuted with our rights, our human rights. It's more of a social acceptance thing. And so I don't want to make light of that, like, but it's no fun at the same time to be questioned and sidelined and, you know, I just, the thing that still gets me is like, I just don't understand why it's so easy to dismiss a whole group of people. It's just really weird. But anyway, maybe that's why I'm here partially. Like I am alive. I have a voice. I have a platform so that I can welcome in all of these people who have been dismissed. And so, I mean, that was kind of the point of this call. It's like, if you're here, if you feel this way, then there are more people like you and you don't have to let that affect you. And if it has affected you, like obviously I'm sharing, it's affected me, then we can decide like that doesn't need to be a part of my reality. I don't need to let myself be lowered in status or wiped out by anyone else. And I can install a boundary around that and know that like my experience is completely valid.
And other people's opinions of you is none of your business, right? So, like, I mean, Tyler Henry can laugh all the way to the bank. And all he's doing is not all he's doing, because I watch his show. He does a lot. And living in his gifts actually takes a lot out of him. And right, like he deserves to be very well compensated, as we all do, for living in our God-given gifts and talents. Like as you were talking about that and saying, people feel like they shouldn't, if it doesn't look like work, right? Like they shouldn't have to charge a lot for it. Like I went through all that too. Like, like we all go through all of that. But whatever line of work you're in, if you're in the right profession for your God-given gifts and talents, right? Then you deserve to be well compensated. I'm going to go to the profession of lawyers, because lawyers are they have a reputation, not for being scammers necessarily, although there's within the lawyer industry there's a hierarchy, right? But in general, right, there's a stereotype. I was looking for the word. There's a stereotype, right, that lawyers are unethical people who charge you too much money and blah blah blah. And yet, right, one, everybody knows great lawyers. I think it's a little bit, this is what I'm getting at, like it's a little bit like psychics, this people, because maybe there has been a stigma, it's like, yeah, she's psychic, but she's really legit, right? Or like, oh, she's a lawyer, but she's like super integrous, right? There's this like need to justify. And I just think as more and more incredible and integrous psychics are out in the world, more Tyler Henrys, more people, right? Like there's more and more exposure, which there is. There is. Hopefully that stereotype goes away. That stereotype goes away. And I also wanted to say that you were saying, we have not been persecuted, but they did burn witches at the stake. So I just I want to make sure
I just mean like, it's not so in the news that like someone comes out as psychic at work and then gets fired or isn't hired. You know what I mean? So it probably does happen. Probably does. But I just didn't want to make light of the like actual human rights violations and workplace violations and like all of that a lot of LGBTQIA people have to face,
Yes. And I think it is an interesting thing. Identity is an interesting thing. It is an interesting thing when we identify as something, it's just an interesting thing. And that's maybe where I was trying to start with, like psychic and lawyer. People aren't born as lawyers. They're maybe born with the propensity to become a lawyer, with the gifts and talents, the God-given gifts and talents that will help them be a great lawyer. As they become a lawyer, maybe they form an identity around that, right? I am a lawyer, but it is different than someone who is born gay. So you could be a gay psychic lawyer. You could have all of those identities. And I think that's why it's so, I feel like that's why this is so triggering. Because there's a difference with choosing psychic as a profession, which is a totally awesome thing to do, and identifying as I am a psychic. And maybe you're not choosing it maybe you're doing something else entirely in your life, right? I think that is the I am that is the trigger.
Yeah, for sure. Because if someone said like, oh, nobody gets paid to write screenplays, it doesn't affect me. Like, I got paid to write a screenplay. I'll probably get paid to write more. Whatever. Okay. Like, go chill out. There are no people who are psychic. All psychics are scammers. Like, no, that hits inside because I do identify as being psychic. So, and you can't take that out of me. That's the other thing. It's like, I probably identify more with being psychic than with being female because I truly identify more with my multidimensional self than with my body, with my human appearance, with my gender expression here. Like, I'm a being of light first and foremost, and I truly see the world energetically. And so, yeah. Now, would I be as upset if someone said like, oh, higher selves don't exist? Like, probably not. But there is something about living this life experience as someone who's extrasensory, and that I don't know, there's something to that. So it is interesting how it is so much about what we identify as, and that's okay. I think none of us are here for perfection. We're not here to like reach enlightenment. We're not here to do anything necessarily in particular other than live this experience. And for me, do it as joyfully as I can. And I do find some joy in helping other people kind of own themselves and in doing that myself. Like I can't help but do that. So I think it's an interesting topic and probably one I'll talk about a whole lot more because I watch Jeffrey Marsh's Instagram videos. They're a non-binary being, and um, that's pretty much all they talk about is like you're okay, everything's fine, and they talk to cis people and say these are words that we don't appreciate you using, and I could definitely see myself doing something similar because I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions people may just not realize. They may not realize they're being rude or saying things that feel bad. And while it's not their fault, they're not doing something to us by them living their experience, maybe it could be helpful to just share the information.
Oh my gosh, I think it totally could be helpful. And I see that Corinne just commented, but I'm laughing at that a little bit because the older I get, right? I remember like judging my grandma and then kind of judging my mom right now for like the things that they would say. So like my grandma used to call people of color colored people. And I was like, Grandma, you can't do that. Right. And she didn't know. She thought she was like what she grew up with. And I was like judging her for being racist. And now I'm the older lady and I say things from time to time that my kids are like, Mom, you can't say that. And I was like, oh, well, what do you say instead? Like it is as simple as that. So I now have huge compassion for the older people in my life that I judged so harshly when I was young. And also, I am recognizing, like, because I'm watching my dad do something similar where we're like, Dad, you can't. No, that's no longer acceptable. And he's like, the world's gotten to whatever. But that's not it. It's just like, if you respect people, this is what they would prefer. And that's okay. Like it's like people are too sensitive. I'm like, well, maybe you're being a little too defensive because does it really matter? So, anyways, all that to be said, Rachel, is I am on board with you, like being the educator of the masses, because I think most of the masses are wanting to be respectful of others, even if they don't understand them. And I love what you said about, and I think most people do seek to understand. Usually the defending of your own beliefs, right, is because you're having trouble understanding somebody else. So I love what you said about I identify more as psychic than female. Like you said that out loud and I was like, oh girl, of course. Or, oh, they, of course. Right? Like I was like, of course you do. Of course you do. Because the female, like, that's just the body you're in. Like, oh, like that made so much sense. But I think that would probably be revolutionary to hear for a lot of people. So worth saying.
I know, and it's so interesting. I guess it's kind of hard when like this is all I know. And so it doesn't occur to me to share, but I want to share. So anyway, I'm at this place. I'm glad it's interesting to hear. And I will repeat that somewhere else at some point. So thanks for the feedback. And yeah, I think this is common, at least among the people that we attract. So Corinne, there's a mantra that I like that says, I'm a spirit having a human experience, and I'm here to get closer to love. Yes, totally. And I just want to highlight Guillaume's too, that we can all be our own psychics. And that is where I like to come from. I don't always have readings available. I much prefer to teach people how to be psychic, even though in my coaching and stuff, I love that interplay. I check in for my people before every single call, and often do intuitive art for them. But teaching people how to be psychic is so amazing. It is so fun. And I do have a bunch of psychic development classes in my course bundle. So if you want to check that out, there's a link to it at the bottom of the email I sent you. I'll put a link somewhere around here too. But yeah, it's a really great time because it is so empowering to know that you can get any answer you want at any point for any reason for you or someone else. It's just great.
I love your psychic development stuff because I grew up fascinated by psychics, jealous of psychics, like wanting that superpower. Like I saw it as a superpower. And it was so cool to learn, like, oh my God, I totally have access to this superpower. Oh, that is that. Like a lot of the psychic development stuff was an understanding of things like that I was already experiencing. And that is my experience of psychic readings is sometimes brand new information, like stuff I had never considered. I do get that. But most times it is a validation of something that I already knew or was leaning toward or read it. Like, and I love that. That's the cool part.
Yeah, and that just brought something else up. Is I've had family members, therapists who were jealous of me because of my abilities, and like it caused really big problems in my life for a little while. So there's a lot that can happen when you have these abilities. So stay strong, people. Accept yourself. You know, if you have triggering events like I just did, like where can you go from there, right? Only up. So keep your eye on the prize and ask yourself, am I feeling this way because I really want to do more with myself? That's my case, right? This is showing me I want to speak up about this and I can do it in a positive way now. So ask yourself that question and you might find a different answer, but one that is enlivening to you. So anyway, thanks for being here. We love you guys. This is amazing to chat with you every week. And yeah, any last words, Carrie?
Well, so the topic is psychic shame,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the encouragement is just if psychic is part of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
if it is part of your God-given gifts and talents, and I'm specifically using those words on on purpose, right? Then these are gifts, right? You have nothing. There is no reason for shame. Oh, that's gonna make me yawn. And the thing that releases shame is, right? Saying it out loud is being vulnerable. And that's what you just did, Rachel. Vulnerability releases shame. And you were just vulnerable about what's going on with you. Why, like, I can't change who I am, right? And in doing that, you help hopefully a lot of people who are watching us um, release their shame as well to realize like, oh yeah, this 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 I'm going to use the word weird. This weird thing about me is actually really normal and nothing to be ashamed of.
Yes, I've never known any other way. So it's a cool life. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Embrace yourself. We'll do the same thing over here. You'll be seeing more from me. Follow me on Instagram.
I just realized,
yeah, perfection.
Nothing to be ashamed of. You don't have to be for everyone.
Yeah. All right. See y'all later. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.